is part of a 4-part series. Well, let's get to work. Welcome to How to Win the Contract series, Federal Contracting 101. This is part of a 4-part series backed by popular demand. This was presented last year by the City of Charleston's Office of Women Minority-Owned Business on how to win the contract. If you are looking to grow and scale your business, you are in the right place. Again, let's get started with a few housekeeping rules. Tonight, I am your moderator, Ruth Jordan, the manager of the City of Charleston's Office of Women Minority-Owned Business, better known as MWBE Enterprise. Our technical support is Mrs. Christine Ott, our new business service manager with Business and Neighborhood Services. And our rock star presenter tonight is Mr. William Furman, who is the Senior Area Manager of SBA South Carolina District Office. This presentation is being recorded. Participants' videos are off along with your audio. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A box. We want to hear from you. We want to be able to answer as many of your questions as possible. And now I'm ready to introduce our rock star presenter tonight, Mr. William Furman. But Mr. William Furman is the Senior Area Manager for the Small Business Administration. He has 30 years of experience with SBA and USDA. He is responsible for 10 coastal counties of South Carolina. We like to say that William is an expert in SBA lending services, government contracting programs, and after COVID-19, we can truly say he is the top SBA COVID-19 relief lending officer for the SBA, US SBA, Small Business Administration. I introduce to some and present to others, William Furman. It's all yours, William.
Thank you, Ruth. Let's hope we're past all that COVID-19 stuff and moving forward. Just want to thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And if you will just confirm that you can see that. Awesome, awesome.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about government contracting, actually federal government contracting tonight. And so our course objectives are government contracting, really it's suitability for you, how the government buys goods and services, federal contracting programs. And when I say programs, we're going we really call them certifications. And so, but they're nothing more than programs. And then we're going to talk a little bit about marketing and selling to the federal government. So we're going to dive into that. But first of all, I do just want to mention what SBA does. And so we like to say SBA works to ignite change, spark action. So small businesses can confidently start, grow, expand, and recover. And we really do that 4 ways. We do that through education. We have what we call resource partners. These are organizations that will work with you one-on-one at no cost to the government. We do a lot of webinars and workshops. We also have capital access programs. And our capital access programs are really very important, especially if you're planning on doing government contracting. You know, government contracting is not like doing contracting or work for other businesses or individuals. You know, you may have to carry those expenses of doing that business with the government for a longer period of time. And it's really important that you have access to capital. You know, maybe you need permanent working capital, maybe you need a line of credit. SBA has all of those programs that can help you with that. So just want to make sure that you're aware of that. Expand your business. You know, we're going to talk about government contracting, and that's a really good way to grow your business. Not necessarily, you wouldn't want to think about government contracting and starting your business, but growing your business, yes. And then recovery, and we're talking about disaster recovery here. SBA is a major arm of the federal disaster recovery process. Anytime there's a federally declared disaster, SBA's disaster loan programs come into play. SBA can provide low interest, long-term loans to businesses, and really businesses of any size, as well as homeowners and renters. A lot of people don't know that. So I think there is a system spinning out there in the Atlantic somewhere. You know, hopefully it goes north and we don't have to worry about that. But in the event of a federally declared disaster, just know that SBA has recovery programs for uncompensated losses. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. So government contracting suitability, you know, it may not be for everyone. And so one of the first things that you need to consider is, you know, what the government purchases and what goods and services you provide. And so when I'm talking about government contracting right here, really I'm talking about any government entity. Maybe it's federal government, maybe it's state government, maybe it's local government, but it's very important to know what the government is purchasing and whether you can provide that or not. You know, it wouldn't make sense for you to spend a lot of time you know, trying to gear up to do business with the government if the government's not buying what you provide. So just that's number one. You need to know that. And the other thing that I just want to go ahead and say is that all government contracting or government entities have different contracting rules. So the government, the federal government has what they call the FAR. And that is those are the regulations, federal acquisition regulations. So that's what governs federal contracting. But the state has their own rules, and then local government has their own rules. And then, you know, even within local government, you know, the city of Charleston has rules, and Mount Pleasant, I guarantee you, you know, they may do things a little differently. So whoever you're doing business with, you need to know and understand and learn what their rules are. So that is very important. So the other thing is that you do need experience. If you're going to do government contracting, you need experience in the industry that you're working. You know, I mentioned that it's a good way to grow your business, but you know, when people, you know, they come in and I talk to them and they want to start a business and then in the next sentence they want to do federal contracting. You know, they're not ready at that point, so they're not suitable. So you've got to build a track record. You know, maybe you want to start really small. Maybe you want to do some subcontracting. A good way is to, you know, start with local government and work your way up. So just, you need to make sure, you need to do your homework and find out all of those things.
So William, are you trying to say that if I've never had a $10,000 contract and now I want to get a $1 million contract with the federal government, or better yet, I haven't had a $2,000 contract to complete something, now I want to compete for $1 million contract? So my chances would be very unlikely that that would be possible. But however, like you said, go for the low-hanging fruit. Start and then grow. I like to say, go towards the low-hanging fruit first.
Yeah, Ruth, that's a good way to put it. You don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to take on more than you can deliver. You know, that would be the worst thing that you could do for your business is to enter into a contract with the government and then not be able to perform, and then, you know, end up being debarred or something along those lines where you're unable to do business with the government again. So, you know, we definitely don't want to see that happen. So gain experience, you know, one step at a time and work your way up. So everything we talk about tonight is going to be for small businesses, okay? And, you know, if I ask everybody on the call what the definition of a small business was, I'm pretty sure everybody would give me a different answer. So SBA has their own size definition. It is determined by NAICS codes, and that is a North American Industry Classification System code. That's what that stands for. And so every industry has a different code, and then within that, SBA has definitions, and it's either going to be based on the average number of employees or the annual receipts. And just to give you some examples, you know, there's some manufacturing industries that can have up to 1,500 employees and still be considered small. You know, if you're looking at construction, just general contractor, you can have annual receipts of $36.5 million annually and still be considered small. In South Carolina, it's like 99% of businesses are considered small. So most businesses are small. And I guess my point is you can actually be pretty large and still be considered a small business. You can be any legal, have any legal form of ownership. So you can be a sole proprietor, you know, you can have a partnership corporation. All of that is okay. You do have to do business within the US. And then the other thing you need to keep in mind, or people need to be aware of, is that it does not include nonprofit businesses. It does SBA. All of our programs are for for-profit small businesses. Okay, so you need to understand that. NAICS codes are really important, and so let's talk a little bit more. They do apply to, you know, our small business definition. And what is a small business, but you know, they're used for other things too. Every business needs to know what their NAICS code is. And so, you know, they define, you know, establishments, and they're used for administrative, contracting, tax purposes. We use them in our loan programs. And so it's really important to know that. Again, size standards using the NAICS codes apply to all federal government programs, including procurement. And to find your NAICS code, and we're going to share this, the city is going to get this out to you, I think, a copy of this slide deck. And so they have, we have live links here, and you can go to the US Census Bureau, and where the website, it says website and it's underlined, that's actually a live link. And you'll be able to go and do a search and drill down to see what your NAICS codes are. You can have more than one. That's another thing. You know, you can have a primary NAICS code, and then you can have secondary NAICS codes. And so the other thing is, when the federal government, when that contracting officer is issuing solicitations, they're going to identify the industries via NAICS codes in their solicitation. And so you'll need to make sure that you have the appropriate NAICS code if you intend to bid on that contract. So that's all very important. And so one thing I also want to mention, be careful, anything contracting, federal contracting, there are a lot of consultants, and that may be being nice, but they will charge you for, you know, any and everything. So there's no need. I'm going to give you a lot of resources tonight.
William, you're fading a little bit.
Okay.
Repeat that.
Yeah, so there's no need for you to hire a consultant and pay them to find your NAICS code. We're going to talk about the system for award management. You know, there are people out there that will charge you a lot of money for things that you can do at no cost. It doesn't cost anything to get your NAICS code, okay? We're going to talk about the system for award management, or SAM. It doesn't cost anything to get that. If you're unsure, you need help, we have resources that are available for that too. So,
and if I can just segue, we talked about NAICS codes on last week in terms of certifications. And so those NAICS codes are is how it identifies, like William says, your business. So if you are a plumber, there is a code for plumbing. If you are an architect, there is a code for architect services. And then there are multiple, you can drill down even further. If you're a bricklayer, landscaper, education, there are all kinds of various NAICS codes, and you can go online and Google NAICS codes, and they'll all come up. And you don't have to pay anybody, like William says, and it doesn't cost you anything to Google NAICS, and they'll all come up for you.
Ruth, I like to say Google is my friend.
That's right. My best professor is Dr. Google.
Google is your friend. So, is your business ready? And we've talked about this, some of this already. Does the government buy what you sell? If you're a restaurant, odds are you're not going to do a whole lot of government contracting. Do you have federal contracting experience? Do you have cash, inventory, working capital? You need to take all of that into consideration before you start doing business with the government. This just goes right into fulfilling a government contract. Do you have the ability, number one, to do the work? Do you have the assets, the working capital to get it done? And then do you know where to find contracting opportunities? And so we're going to talk more about that. SAM.gov, and I've got a slide specifically for that. It's a really good place to look for opportunities. There are other apps or programs, if you will, that some of them come with a fee or a cost. They're pretty good. If you want to focus on doing business with the government and you want to find solicitation opportunities, one is bid speed. I'm familiar with some. They don't necessarily charge everyone, but there are some fees that can be associated with that. But I'm going to give you a lot of other resources to find contracting opportunities. So, how the government buys goods and services. And again, I'm talking about the federal government right here. And so, the federal government can use credit cards. Most agencies and offices may have a credit card that they can use, but it is limited. It's really for supplies and equipment for federal purposes, it's like $10,000. For services, it's $2,500, and then for construction, it's like $2,000. So those are not really big numbers. So most of the time, the government uses solicitations or contracts to buy its goods and services. And so there are three different ways that the government does this. And number one is full and open competition. And this is where the government they issue a solicitation, and it's open to everybody. It's a level playing field, full visibility. Any responsible party can bid on that. And so, if you're a small business, that's tough. You may be going up against, huge corporations, the Boeings of the world, and that's a hard one. So the government has created what we call set-asides, and this is where they just like it says, set aside contracting dollars for certain groups. Number one is just small businesses in general. And then number two, we have certifications, again, programs that further reduce that competition and reduce that field. And we're going to talk about those tonight and how you can get those certifications. But there is a rule of two. If the government advertises something as a set aside, they have to be pretty sure that there are going to be at least two firms or companies that are going to bid on that contract. And then there are also subcontracting limitations. So the company that makes the bid is going to have to do at least, it depends on the certification and that type of thing, but it ranges from about 15% to 50% of the work. The rest could be subcontracted, but at least part of that they're going to have to do themselves. And then finally, the third way, is a sole source. And what sole source means is that the government negotiates one-on-one with a business. So there is no other competition other than just that negotiation. And so there are only certain situations that can happen in. Normally, the government is looking for competition. They're looking for the best price, just like anybody else. But if you have a goods or services that only you can provide, and that's rare, it could be a sole source. Maybe there's a compelling urgency. It's some type of an emergency, international agreements or national security or public interest, authorized or required by law. We don't see any of these really very often. And then what we do see is that it's allowed under certain small business contracting and business development programs, especially the 8A program. And I'm going to explain what 8A is. The government uses a lot of acronyms. And so that 8A is a business development program for socially and economically disadvantaged businesses. So that is really the only time we see the sole source.
So William, before you get past that, there's a question in the chat box about how do you know which type of competition that will be available?
Yeah, so it will be indicated right in that solicitation. And when you do a search in SAM, you can define it. When you're looking for those contracts, you can define it by the type. If it's a small business set aside, if it's an 8A set aside, woman-owned small business set aside, yeah, it's defined. You will know that in the solicitation.
Are open, request for proposals, request for quotes. It'll
Yes.
all be listed in, and that's why it's important next week when we talk about understanding the scope of work and reading the contract. So we'll get a little bit deeper into that.
Yep, good question though. Good question. This slide, honestly, this slide may be the best slide in the whole deck. And this is procurement assistance, right? And so SBA resources, we have business opportunity specialist, and that is a name really just, it's a contracting specialist. We have 3 of them in our Columbia office. I have their contact information at the end. We also have SBDC contracting consultant. Here in Charleston, we have Scott Poole with the SBDC. He is a contracting specialist and he can work with you one-on-one, again, at no cost to help you with your contracting activities. And so you should know him. If you're going to do government contracting, you should know Scott. We also have a procurement technical assistance center. You should also get registered with them. And so they can help you with government contracting as well. They can actually help you with solicitations and pulling your bids together and your cost and pricing. So that's a huge resource. And then their marketing resources. I told you, I promised I was going to get this for you. There's a lot of it on sam.gov. Okay, so you've got to get registered in SAM. I'm getting ready to talk about that. The other one that a lot of people don't know about is the Dynamic Small Business Search System. We call it DSBS, again, another acronym. That's an SBA system. It pulls the data out of SAM, and it creates almost like a resume for your business. You do have the ability to add to that. And so if I'm a contracting officer and I'm looking for somebody to do some work, so I know the NAICS code that I'm searching for, I can go into DSBS and do a search, and I want it for Charleston. I want to look who's in Charleston that can do this work. They can go in there and they can refine their search, and they'll pull you up and see, what businesses are there that can do it. So it's a very important when you're entering your information in SAM. One of the questions is, do you want to share it with SBA? And you need to make sure you click the box for that. And then there's also the subcontracting network system, subnet, USA spending, GSA subcontracting directory, DoD prime contracting directory. You can do a lot of research, and it takes time. You got to invest time into doing government contracting. But these are all great resources. These links are live. Again, we'll get you the slides, and you can use these links to actually go and check all of this out. All right, let's talk about SAM. I already said, number one, don't pay anybody to if you get to a point and ask for a credit card, stop, just get out, go back and start over. But you've got to have SAM to do government contracting. Okay, that's a real big requirement. If you're not registered in SAM, you can't do business with the federal government. It's as simple as that. But you got to get registered. It changed a few months ago, and so you used to have to have a what we call a DUNS number through Dun and Bradstreet. They changed that, and now you have to have a unique entity ID number or UEI number. And so you get that, that's generated through SAM. So that's the first thing you do. And then you go through and register for SAM. It's going to take some time. I would say a couple of hours, you just need, when you register, you need to set time aside so you're not being distracted, nobody's bothering you, and you need to take your time and make sure that all the information you input is correct. That goes for all, if you're applying for a certification, all of this, don't enter the incorrect information. Make sure you don't transpose numbers, all of those kinds of things. You need to just take your time and make sure that you get it right the first time. So it's a little harder if you make an error to go back and get that corrected. We're also going to share a SAM checklist with you, okay? And so this is a document. Ruth threatened me. We only have an hour, so we're going to get you this checklist, and it's very detailed. And so just use that checklist, and you can get through SAM. And if you have trouble, you can call me. You can call our BOS specialist in Columbia. You can call the SBDC, and you can also work with the PTAC. So there's hope out here in doing all of this. So let's go on and start talking about our set aside is small business. 23% of all government contracts, or the government has a goal to spend 23% of its contract dollars with small businesses. And then within that, this is where we have these quote certifications. And so we have a woman-owned small business certification, has a 5% goal. Disadvantaged or small disadvantaged businesses that includes 8A, that's 11%. And so that number has increased recently to 11%. So that's a goal that the government has to meet or strives to meet. HubZone is 3%. And then our service disabled veteran-owned small business certification is 3%. And so we're going to go through all four of these as far as eligibility, what that means, and if it is applicable to you. So, you may not qualify for some of these, or you may not qualify for any of these four. However, if you're still a small business, keep in mind 23% of those contracting dollars just have to go to small business in general. So even if you don't qualify for these, you can still do business with the government and still access set-aside funding. So let's dive in. We have the woman-owned small business and economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business certification. And so these are, this certification is designed for industries that have been determined to be underrepresented in the industry, okay? So there's a certain number, there's 100 and some actually, of NAICS codes that have, in industries that have been identified to be underrepresented. You can go to SBA.gov or Google is another good place, and you can get a list of all of those NAICS codes that meet this criteria. A lot of people think that it's across the board, but it's not. There are a limited number of industries, and again, it's tied to what has been determined to be underrepresented. And so it's important that you take a look at that. As far as the eligibility goes, this is a good one right here. 51% ownership requirements. I talk to people all the time, and it's a guy, husband and wife. The husband says, I'm gonna get my wife, I'm gonna give her 51%. And then we're gonna start doing, we're gonna start seeking these WOSB contracts. And the wife does nothing with the business, right? That doesn't work. The woman has to own and control the business. All right. You don't want to get in trouble with the government. And so it's very important that people understand that. This is one that this comes up, a fair amount of time. So the woman has to own has a 51% ownership, has to own it, has to have the highest officer position, has to have managerial experience, has to manage daily operations, right? And so she runs the business. She's not running the business, you're not eligible for WOSB. There is no minimum time in business. So if you were, if you had been in business a year or whatever, you can obtain this certification. The other thing is, again, you have to have the proper NAICS codes to meet the WOSB certification. So those are the key points for eligibility on the WOSB. Now, we have also an economically disadvantaged WOSB, and that opens up more NAICS codes, okay? And so if you meet these guidelines, personal net worth of less than 750,000, 3-year average income 350 or less, and fair market value of all assets is 6 million or less, then you could qualify for the economically disadvantaged small business certification as well. And so I would recommend that, you know, if you meet that, just do both. There is more work on the application, but I would certainly do both. So WOSB and EDWOSB set-aside contracts, you know, both have certain NAICS codes. We talked about that. We've talked about the rule of 2. You know, the contracting officer has reasonable expectation that 2 or more WOSBs will submit an offer. If that's the case, he can advertise that as a set-aside. And again, that will be identified when that's done. And then, of course, the award price that has to be awarded at a fair and marketable price. Okay, so those are the things that, from the contracting side, contracting officer, that's really what they're going to be looking at as far as issuing this or WOSB contract as a set aside. Now, how do you apply? beta.certify.sba.gov is really the platform for application for both WOSB and we'll soon talk about 8A. But there's a lot of information here, okay? So there's a checklist that you can pull out of this that tells you all the information that you have to have. It will help verify your eligibility. There's a lot of information as far as, you know, what's required to be eligible. Request for information. You can submit questions to the help desk, and you create an account to proceed with your application. Now, you may not be able to see this, but where it says beta certified.sba.gov with the people in the slide, it says prepare. If you click that, and this is not live, but if you go to the website and you click prepare, you will get a list that will take you to the list of what you need. And then, am I eligible? That's a really good tool. It will ask you a series of questions. It's really kind of TurboTax like, you know, if you will. It will ask you questions, and as you walk through it and answer all the questions, it's going to determine what programs you may be eligible for. And then the knowledge base there's a lot of information. So this is actually where you apply. So this is very important to a good slide. So just remember, certified.sba.gov. Now, there are third-party certifiers that SBA has approved to do your application for you. I personally don't recommend it. You know, they're here. There are links. These would be live links, and you can go and check it out. It does come with a cost, and I think there's an upfront cost and an annual fee. So just you have to do your research on that. Again, I don't think it's needed. I think you can do it on your own. You can go to the SBDC, you can go to the PTAC, and you know, with Certify, you should be able to go through that process without that much trouble. How long does it take? It depends. I talked to someone the other night. It took like 6 months. I don't know the details of it. I think there may have been some hiccups along the way, but it takes a little time. So just be patient on that, on getting your certification.
And what about the UEI number when you're getting registered in SAMS? How long does it take?
No, that should be pretty well immediate. Yeah, that doesn't take long. And SAM doesn't take, you just need to plan on you know, set aside a morning or set aside an afternoon, block everything out, turn your phone off and just work through it, and you can get registered in SAM.
Okay. About a day, if you put in the time and answer the questions, because it won't let you go forward unless you input all the information.
Yeah. And that checklist that you'll get will help as well. And then if you have any questions, we can certainly answer those. Now, we do have a service disabled veteran owned small business certification, and this is one where you actually don't have to apply. You self-certify to this in SAM. Okay, so and this is an SBA program. Now, I do need to mention that the VA has their own program. There again, it can get confusing. I think one of the programs, so the VA does not accept SBA's SDVOSB program. They have their own SDVOSB program, and they also have what they call Veterans First. Okay, so VA program, you'll need to go to the VA website and check that out. So SBA, it's self-certified, and so you can use this for other federal agencies that do set-asides for the service disabled veteran owned small business. So again, this is for service disabled veterans. The VA has a program for service disabled as well as other veterans. Okay, so two different programs. There's been talk about SBA taking those over, but I've been hearing that for quite a while. So yeah, the government takes a little time. And so you may see some changes in the future, but for right now, if you wanted to do business with the VA, you would go through their programs. Now, same thing, you'll see a lot of this looks very similar to, once you get into the requirements, but, service disabled veteran owned business does have to have 51% ownership requirements, has to have the highest officer position, has to have the proper NAICS codes, managerial experience, and manage daily operations. Okay, same thing. It's the disabled vet, service disabled vet that has to be running the business, not someone else. So that one's pretty straightforward. Let's talk about the 8A business development program. Now, this is one that it does have an application, and it's probably, or it is the most entailed certification that you would apply for. And so this is a program for socially and economically disadvantaged businesses. And it's a two-pronged program. Number one, it does come along or provides assistance to get government contracts, and that's done through set-asides, as we talked about, as well as sole source authority. So this is one that gets a lot of attention because you can get sole source contracts if you're an 8A business. Now, you do have to be in business for 2 full years for this one. The other programs don't have a requirement for time in business, but this one does. You have to be in business for 2 full years. The other thing about this is it's a 9-year program, and you can only participate 1 time. Okay, so this is another one. When we talk about being ready, this is one you need to make absolutely sure that you're ready. And so you really should be doing some government contracting before you apply for this, because you don't want to figure government contracting out while the clock is ticking. Because if you burn up a year or 2 trying to learn how to do government contracting, that time is critical. And so it's really important that you're ready to do that. So 9-year program. Once you graduate out, that's it. You can't come back. You can't start another business and come back. It's done one time. So you've got to take advantage of that. Another thing I do want to mention is that you can have multiple certifications too. So you could potentially have every one, and so you're just stacking the deck in your favor the more certifications that you can obtain. And so that's important. Or you can use that really as a strategy. When you're doing this. Yeah, I think I've 2 full years, one time. You do have to be a member of designated groups. You have to be recognized as being socially disadvantaged. And so if you are in the designated groups, you are presumed to be socially disadvantaged. And so that includes Black American, Asian Pacific American, Hispanic American, Native American, subcontinent Asian American. So those 5 are presumed to be socially disadvantaged. Now, if you're not in one of those groups, it's still possible that you can provide documentation through what we call a preponderance of evidence that you are socially disadvantaged. And it could be based on, it can be based on race, ethnicity, gender, physical handicap, long-term environmental issues, really anything that you can document. And so, a lot of times women think that they can apply for 8A, and just because you're a woman does not mean that you qualify for an 8A program. Now, I have seen women that got their 8A certification, but they were able to provide evidence, that they were socially disadvantaged. Another one that I've seen, we had a blind person, they were able to provide documentation. They had a physical handicap. And so they provided documentation, that they were socially disadvantaged. So that can be done, but you have to have, SBA is going to look at that pretty hard, and you've got to have all of that documentation. So let's talk about the economic disadvantage. Personal net worth, less than 750,000. And so that does exclude, equity in your business, your primary residence, and retirement accounts. And so, that's pretty substantial. 3-year average income of $350,000 or less, that's pretty substantial. And then fair market value of all assets of $6 million, again, pretty substantial. So, you definitely don't have to be impoverished to meet the economic disadvantage portion of this.
So wait, let me segue to a question that's in the chat box. When
Okay.
it says 2 full years, is there a dollar amount attached with this one? If your business was established more than 2 years, but you have not earned a certain amount of money or not seriously worked your business 1 year, will you count to get in on the 8A business development program?
Yeah, so that's a pretty good question too. SBA, and so these are processed out of our headquarters, right? So those guys that or ladies and gentlemen that process these applications, look at them pretty hard, and they would likely have questions for you. Again, they want to make sure that you're prepared and ready. The last thing anybody wants to do is put you in a position to do government contracting and you not be able to perform. And so that is the basis for that 2-year requirement, is that, that you are ready to grow your business. And so if you created a business, let's say, you got your LLC, you registered with the Secretary of State, but you didn't really have any business activity, they're going to ask a lot of questions about that. They want to see revenue, they want to see expenses, and it is looking for 2 full years. So I can't give you a hard answer, but I can tell you that they would ask questions certainly about that. And you want to make sure yourself that if your business is new, SBA basically considers any business that hasn't been in business for more than 2 years a new business. And that's whether it's contracting or whether it's on our lending side. And so you want to make sure that you're established, that you have a strong foundation, and that your business is growing, and that you're ready to keep growing and do government contracting. So hope that answers it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Business development assistance available. This is through 8A. If you get into the program, SBA does, the first thing that we do is an orientation with you to explain, the program and get you, started on the right foot. We also provide referrals and training. So it's a two-pronged approach. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. It's two-pronged approach, you know, assistance to get government contracts on one hand, and then or technical assistance and training on the other. So we want to grow your business, give you contracts, make sure you have all the resources available. We provide, again, another acronym, what we call 7J training. So it's training specifically targeted for 8A businesses. There's special marketing that's available to 8A firms, invitations to 8A business development events, as well as other marketing assistance. And then surety bonds, you know, are available as well. And I have another slide on that one, so I'm not going to speak really about surety bonds a whole lot, other than, you know, special emphasis is made for surety bonds to 8A firms. You know, want to make sure that you have what you need to get those contracts. So what do? Before the application, you know, again, this applies, I think you're seeing a common theme by now. You know, you're going to obtain your UEI number. You're going to make sure you have your NAICS codes. You're going to get registered in SAM. Then you're going to apply for the certification. You do need to review an application guide that's available. You need to get all your supporting documentation up front. Don't do it as you go along. Get the checklist, get it all in hand before you apply. And then you're going to apply for 8A on certified.sba.gov. That is the platform for the application as well. Again, resources that are available. There's information on the knowledge base in Certify, and then you can actually request assistance through the Certify system as well. There's a help desk. If you run into any problems, they should be able to help you too. Just make sure you don't make errors. That's probably the biggest thing I see. That's what slows things down. If you hear people that, you know, it takes a long time. If you make an error, sometimes it can't be corrected, and you just have to let the system time out, and then you have to apply again. So it's really very important just to make sure you get it correct. HubZone certification, and I think this is the last one, but HubZone is a locational based certification. Okay, so the government basically has identified impoverished areas, and the intent is to spend contracting dollars. You know, we're in those communities that need it the most. So again, it's a locational based program. 35% or the principal office has to be located in the hub zone. Principal office means where most employees work. So if you had a company with two, not necessarily the headquarters, but it's where most of the employees work. The other thing is that 35% of those employees have to live in the hub zone. So this can be this one can be a little bit challenging. So of course you do have to, 51% has to be US owned, does have to be a small business. So, and you have to be in the hub zone location. So let's look at that a little bit more. You're wondering, well, how do I know where that is? And I've got a slide for that. But before I get to that one, let's talk about site visits. So if you get in this program, SBA actually comes and does physical site visits. We want to make sure that you are indeed in a hub zone and that you meet the hub zone criteria, and you do have to maintain those SBA standards, primarily that principal office is in the hub zone and that 35% of your employees live in a hub zone. And then you have to recertify every 5 years. So, you know, as employees come and go, that's the most difficult thing about this one. Is trying to make sure that you maintain that 35% goal. So, you know, the goal is 35%, but you probably should, you know, shoot much higher, you know, 45, 50%, depending on the number of employees you have. So before the application, again, review the HubZone primer, get your UEI number, get your NAICS codes, register in SAM. This one is a little bit different in that you do not apply through Certify. You actually apply through what we call the general login system. And that's on the SBA website. So that's a little bit different. But again, gather all your supporting documentation, verify requested information, you submit it, and then you will update your SAM profile once it's approved. All right, this is the slide that I wanted to get to. So you can just Google is your friend. You can Google HubZone map, and you'll see a link, and just go to that link and you can enter your address and it will tell you whether you're in a HubZone or not. So I just punched in my office, and I'm over on Ashley Phosphate. You can see the pin there. I've kind of had to expand it out, so it's rather small. But I'm over on Ashley Phosphate, and honestly, I kind of thought I was in a HubZone. But as you see, I'm not qualified. My office is not in a HubZone. But if you look at the legend, those HubZones are either going to be defined by census tract. You may have an entire county that's a HubZone, and then it also identifies expiring HubZone. So if it's shown as redesignated, that one is about to go out of the HubZone. So very important if you were looking, to try to get your certification or maybe even move your office to a HubZone, to see, you wouldn't want to move an office to an expiring HubZone. So just you can look at that, and it's really kind of interesting. Allendale, McClellanville, all of that area up there is in a HubZone. So that's how you find that. So I said I was going to talk about surety bonds, and so a lot of people don't know. This is one of the best kept secrets of SBA. If you're in the construction industry, you are aware of how important bonding is, and SBA does have a surety bond guarantee program, and so that's a program where SBA provides a guarantee to that surety company that if you defaulted on your contract, and they made a claim was made on the bond, SBA would step in and provide that guarantee. They would basically pay that bond. So it reduces the risk to the surety company and really encourages them to issue bonds, surety bonds, to small businesses. And it helps three ways. Number one, maybe you're a fairly new business and you're just having trouble getting bonding, period. You should look at the SBA Surety Bond Guarantee Program. If you need to increase your bonding capacity, you need to look at the Surety Bond Guarantee Program. And then you should also look at it if you're trying to reduce your bonding costs. So many times you can actually save money by using an SBA surety bond, and it will reduce your bonding costs. So if more information is available on that at sba.gov, and it actually lists all the participating surety companies. So if you were interested in that, there's information there, and then you can just look at the surety companies that are participating and contact them.
William, we're about getting towards the end of our hour. We may go over just a few minutes, but there's a lot of questions in our Q&A box. So we would like you all, if you have any burning questions, please put them in the Q&A box, because we'd like to answer those questions. And a lot of this will also continue next week with our third series, Understanding the Scope of Work and How to Bid. And so we're going to talk, before you leave, we're going to talk about those final two webinars, Understanding the Scope of Work and How to Bid. And then finally, if you win the contract, how do I get paid? That's going to be the fourth webinar. And so surety bonds are going to be very important, because when you're bidding on contracts, sometimes they require that you have what we call bonding capacity. And so what William just talked about is very, very important to understand. How do you go about getting the surety bond, which is like insurance on that particular project? So go ahead, William. We got just a few minutes, and we have several questions we want to get to.
Yeah, so Ruth, perfect timing. I'm finishing up. I do want to say though, I had to mention this slide. We have just started our Small Business of the Year award nominations. This is open until December the 8th. I would like to encourage any small businesses that would like to participate in this. We have a lot of different categories. We have the Small Business Person of the Year. That's like the really big award. But then we also have other awards. We have the Female Small Business Person of the Year, the Minority Small Business Person of the Year, Rural Small Business Person of the Year, Veteran Small Business Person of the Year, and the Young Entrepreneur of the Year. And so if you go to our website, and I meant to put the link there and I didn't do it, sba.gov/SC. You'll see the notice there for our awards. You can self-nominate, not a problem. The nomination package is there as well. So we'd like to encourage you and Ruth, Christina, if y'all have anybody that you think would be a good candidate, we would love to see you, nominate them for these awards. I cover the lower part of South Carolina, so I definitely want to make sure that we have some good businesses that are represented from the Low Country.
And can you repeat that? Can you repeat that website again so Christina can put it in the chat box? What is it? SBA?
Yeah, sba.gov/SC as in South Carolina.
That's right, SC. And so again, I oftentimes tell people, pat your own self on the back. Nominate yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to nominate you. You are phenomenal businesses and business owners. Nominate yourselves for these great awards.
And sorry, for some reason, William, I can't find it, but I will find it and send it out with the slides and recording. I'm searching.
Okay. And so we have a few questions in the Q&A box.
Okay.
And one question was, if she is a disabled veteran and a woman-owned business, which certification should she apply for?
Both.
And that's what I said. Apply for as many, because you want to be able to have various opportunities. We talked about that last week. It's like getting multiple degrees, associates, BA, BSs, PhDs, all those kinds of certifications will help you obtain and possibilities and opportunities for businesses. It says, would you need to be a current SBA customer to take advantage of help with the Surety Bond program?
No, you don't have to be a current customer. No, you can, that can be your first SBA activity. Absolutely.
It's an open market program to help small businesses be able to compete, because it's like being able to go to the marketplace to get insurance, what they call surety bonds. And it says,
so it's very similar to our lending programs. SBA provides what we call loan guarantees. And again, like Ruth says, it's nothing but insurance to the bank in that situation. In the event that there's a default, the bank comes back to SBA and gets repaid a percentage of their loss. Same thing for surety company. It just reduces their risk and encourages them to issue those bonds and increase bonding capacity for small businesses.
Okay. Is the Small Business Mentor Protege program related to contracting?
It is, and that is a totally separate program. Really, don't have time to go in depth on that one tonight. But again, if you go to sba.gov, all of this information is located there. And so that's a good source. Or if you want to contact me later on, or one of our BOS specialists, we can help you with that too.
Okay.
Ooh, and shout out, someone found the link, the press release about the Small Business Award guidelines. So thank you.
And they just put it in the chat. And so and that's the next question. Is the Small Business Award a national competition? Will you compete with other states in those categories? Or this will be set aside for South Carolina only?
Yeah, so some of the awards, so the National Small Business Person of the Year, that's the really big one. And so you would, if you were selected in South Carolina, you would receive that award. You advance to the region, and then if you get the region, then you advance for a national award. Some of them are, most of them are just in South Carolina. And so you're recognized in South Carolina, not necessarily nationally.
So we want to make
We-
sure that you are aware that we're not out of information. We may be out of a few minutes, but we're not out of information. On next Wednesday, same place, same time, we will be here with part 3 of our series called How to Win the Contract. So on next Wednesday, we will be entertaining the subject matter, understanding the scope and winning the contract with attorney Denisha McCleary of McCleary Consultant. She is an expert in government contracting, making sure that you understand the scope of a contract and how to bid, because you want to make sure that you understand how to win that contract, that you're not underbidding and you're not overbidding. And then finally, the last Wednesday of this month, September 28th, you won the contract. Now what? Contract compliance. You want to make sure that if you get the contract, you want to make sure you get paid. And we're going to make sure that that happens. So again, we want to thank each of you all. And for all those that attend at least 3 of the 4 series, you will receive a gift from the City of Charleston's Office of Women Minority Owned Business. We want to say thank you. Our contact information is made available here on the screen as well. The City of Charleston's Office of Women Minority Owned Business. I'm Ruth Jordan, your host, and Christina Ott also here. And then your presenter, I like to call him rock star with SBA, William Furman. And so again, guys, thank you so very much. I hope you enjoy yourselves with the information on today. But more importantly, we'll see you next Wednesday, same place, same station, understanding the scope and how to win the bid. See you next week.